yours truly, Brevin Thompson, is back to talk about Scream, or Scream 5 as I'm going to call it, because that's essentially what this film is. And this is the first film in the franchise to not have any involvement whatsoever with Wes Craven, who has long since passed away, and is instead directed by Matt Bettinelli and Tyler Gillett. I apologize if I pronounced your names wrong, who previously helmed Ready or Not, which I thought was pretty good. So, with them being the directors for Scream 5, I was actually really interested to see what their take on this franchise would be. And I was also a little bit worried because this is the first film in the franchise, like I mentioned before, did not have any involvement whatsoever with Wes Craven. So I was just like, I don't know. I mean, Ready or Not was good, but Scream is a completely different franchise. But with the original cast coming back and with these directors getting involved, I had somewhat of a little glimmer of hope. But long story short, despite my doubts, I honestly thought that the film was actually pretty good, surprisingly. It's not perfect at all by any means, and it's nowhere as perfect as the original film. I would say it's one of the better sequels in the franchise, though. I would say it's my favorite sequel in the franchise since probably, honestly, Scream 2, honestly. 25 years have passed since the events of the original film. A new Ghostface killer emerges and begins a new killing spree. So it's up to Sidney Prescott, Dewey Riley, Gail Weathers, and a few newcomers to uncover the truth behind these killings. I'm a fan of the Scream franchise, and when it came to Wes Craven's work as a horror director, I've always loved what he brought to the table, mostly when it came to Scream, and especially Nightmare on Elm Street, and even like some of his other films like Last House on the Left, or The Hills Have Eyes, or even some of his lesser known films like, say, People Under the Stairs or Red Eye. He was a master of horror. So when it came to this new addition to the franchise, the first film in the franchise did not have any involvement with Wes Craven, I was a bit worried at first with how this would go, but given that you have the directors behind Ready or Not, and of course the original cast coming back, and a few newcomers in this film, I was a bit intrigued to see how this would go, and honestly, like I mentioned before, I was surprised that it was actually really good. The original cast work great as always. It's always good to see more of like David Arquette, Neve Campbell, and Courtney Cox. Because when it comes to, like, each Scream film, you're mostly here for these characters, because you always want to see more of Sidney and Dewey and Gail. And you're always wondering, I mean, is one of them going to die in this film? And you keep wondering if they're going to survive, like, because in each film in the franchise, I mean, they're always in a tight spot, but eventually they survive. But I don't want to go into spoilers, but I will say there was like one character that didn't survive who I thought would survive, and there was like a few characters who did survive that I thought would die in this film. So that's as far as I'm gonna go. So as far as like who I expected to survive or not. Now when it comes to the newcomers in this film, I really love Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega as the sisters Sam and Tara Carpenter, which is obviously supposed to reference John Carpenter, the director of the original Halloween. When it comes to those characters in particular, I really love their chemistry together, and when it comes to Sam's character in particular, she has, shall we say, a dark secret that she's keeping from her sister. And when it's revealed, I did not see that coming. I mean, they kind of like hint at like what they're giving away at first, but that bombshell, if you've seen the film, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But holy shit, that reveal just, yeah. That really got me there. there are some really suspenseful moments in the film. There's like one in particular where you might have seen like glimpses of in the trailer, where Tara, who played by Jenna Ortega, like gets a phone call from Ghostface, and uh, we of course she tries to like lock all the doors with her cell phone, and then the doors unlock, and then she locks them again, and then the killer unlocks them again. And it's a really suspenseful moment. And when it comes to the kills, they are brutal as shit. Some of them, definitely the most brutal in the franchise. I've always liked how the Scream films were always self-referential, and they kind of like poke at like certain cliches in certain horror films, and they even like poke at like the rebootquel era, as some of us, if you're gonna call it that. They even reference that in one particular scene. They reference The Force Awakens. They reference the 2018 Halloween, where like legacy characters would come to guide newcomers to like offer a new path for the franchise. And this film in particular does the same thing, where you have the legacy characters come back to help the new characters try to track down this killer and try to kill him. And as far as like the rebootquel sufferential thing of how it works and how it works for this film, there are some moments for me where it does work, and some moments where it really didn't work for me. And I saw this with a group of my friends a few days ago, and as far as like the moments of horror that are like mostly viewed as cliches nowadays, they added into this film, but they kind of put a new twist on it. Like, there's one scene in particular where a character gets in the shower, and there's a moment where the Ghostface killer like calls one other character. I'm not gonna reference it and say who it is because it's a spoiler, where he even references Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, and I was like, okay, so are they gonna, like, I thought they were gonna redo the whole shower scene from the original Psycho, but they don't do that. But it's mostly good at mostly building up suspense, and that's kind of what I like about this film, is just like, it kind of like leaves you like guessing what the hell's gonna happen next. And another thing that I liked about these films was the whodunit formula, because you have like characters who are like close to the protagonist in these films, and you always left wondering. There's often someone who is close to the main characters, and you often wonder who is the killer. And there's even a moment in the film where Sam and her boyfriend visit Dewey, and he explains the Scream/Stab formula, which is the in-movie version of Scream, and he explains the formula and how it works, and he said that the killer is often revealed in the third act. And there's even one moment in particular that I loved, and he says sometimes it's often someone who is close to the main character, and also it's often the main character's boyfriend, which is that happened in the original film, because in the original Scream, one of the killers was Sidney's boyfriend, Billy Loomis. The film, for the most part, is really fast-paced, though there were, like, some characters in particular that kind of annoyed me. For the most part, when it comes to the cast, the direction, the score, the suspenseful moments, and the whodunit formula as it continues as it continues on from the previous films in the franchise, I honestly think that this is probably the best sequel since probably Scream 2. And I like how these directors try to honor Wes Craven's legacy. And there's even, I really like that once the film ends, there's even like a little tribute for Wes Craven, which I did think was a nice touch. So yeah, I really like that. Overall, I just think that this was a solid film, and if you're a fan of the Scream franchise or if you're a horror fan in general, I definitely recommend this film. So I'm gonna give Scream 5 a B plus. So what did y'all think of the film? Let me know in the comments below. And guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new films, of course, you know where to find me.